A staple of many childhoods was Nickelodeon. The classic shows, great Nicktoons, and game shows made for hours and hours of television. Through the years, shows have come and gone, but as fans look back on their favorites, some pretty shocking theories have boiled to the surface. See what characters actually died, who crossed over onto other shows, and what shocking revelations may come from your favorite Nicktoons. Before you watch, click subscribe. You'll join the notification squad and be the first to know of new content. Timmy Turner is Danny Phantom. Growing up with Fairy Godparents has given Timmy Turner some great perks. We followed his adventures through 10 seasons of the hit Nicktoon Fairly OddParents and even saw the addition of a third godparent by the name of Poof. Timmy can wish for anything he wants and gets to go on all sorts of adventures. Of course, Timmy's fun only lasts to the age of 13. That's when the godparents have to move on from their assignment. This left lots of fans wondering about the future of Timmy, but the answer is clear according to a widespread theory. Upon turning 13, Timmy wishes to become a ghost-fighting superhero, and his whole world is transformed into Danny Phantom. That's right, a popular theory states that Danny Phantom and Timmy Turner are actually the same person. The characters have very similar looks and the same color eyes. Supporting evidence can also be found through the show's supporting characters. Chester looks like a younger version of Dash, AJ is a younger version of Tucker, and Trixie is a younger version of Paulina. The characters not only look alike, but they also have similar personality traits. Considering that both shows were created by Butch Hartman, the connection makes more sense and is only even stronger.
Hey, SpongeBob.
Yes, Patrick?
Do you know how to swim?
No.
SpongeBob is Reborn. For a show that's been on for nearly 20 years and counting, SpongeBob Squarepants has gone through several changes over this time. One of the biggest differences between the personality and the way SpongeBob acts can be seen at the start of Season 5. In this season, SpongeBob appears much more childish. He's not as intelligent as he once was, and he does a lot more immature things with his friends like Patrick. The drastic change in character points to one theory stating that SpongeBob was actually reborn after dying, and that his newborn younger self doesn't have the same maturity as his previous incarnation did. Wondering when SpongeBob died and was reborn? It's all on film for you. In the first SpongeBob Squarepants feature-length film, SpongeBob and Patrick are captured and brought to a beach souvenir shop. They're put under a heated lamp at a table and dry out. The movie shows a tear bring them back to life, but real-life sponges are actually asexual and can reproduce on their own. SpongeBob didn't come back to life, he was merely reborn again. The younger and immature SpongeBob also explains why he didn't remain the manager of the Krusty Krab as seen at the end of the movie.
All I wanted was revenge.
Revenge!
The Fake Pete. One of the more quirky and bizarre shows to ever appear on Nickelodeon was The Adventures of Pete and Pete. The two brothers lived a strange life filled with superheroes, ice cream men, and some pretty crazy scenarios involving friends and family. Things may just seem a little weirder when you consider a fan theory stating the younger Pete was actually a fictional manifestation of the older Pete. Basically, it says that Pete had schizophrenia, and he envisioned the younger Pete as a way to capture years of youthful adventures he missed out on. Pete would also manifest other characters on the show like the strongman named Artie. The theory has some evidence in the form of the way the characters act around Pete, also for the simple fact that his parents would name both children by the same name. The mom on the show also has a metal plate on her head, which could have been the result of a condition passed down to the older Pete. Does the whole theory sound familiar? It basically plays out like a child's version of Fight Club, where Tyler Durden isn't a real character but still has the ability to interact and communicate with the narrator of the story.
I don't know. I don't know.
Crazy Steve kidnapped Carly. Producer and writer Dan Schneider has spent years developing shows for Nickelodeon. He's had several back-to-back hits, starting with Drake and Josh, transitioning to iCarly, and then eventually forming into crossover hits like Victorious and Sam and Cat. There's one thing connecting the universe of all these shows, and that's a character known as Crazy Steve. Played by Jerry Trainer, Crazy Steve made his debut in Drake and Josh as one of the movie theater employees. Once iCarly premiered, the actor Jerry Trainer played Carly's older brother Spencer, but fans quickly strung a theory together making you question whether Spencer is really Carly's brother at all. The theory states that Crazy Steve eventually killed Drake and Josh while kidnapping their younger sibling Megan. Through manipulation and brainwashing, Crazy Steve moved Megan to Seattle, forced her to change her name to Carly, and the rest is history. The theory seemed a little far-fetched at first. That is until a random episode of Sam and Cat showed Crazy Steve in an insane asylum. This helped make the final connection, and revealed Crazy Steve was finally caught after Carly got away on the series finale of iCarly. If Sam and Cat had continued to produce more episodes, we may have gotten more answers about the true story of Crazy Steve. Drake and Josh, the reality show. Every episode of Drake and Josh pretty much began the same way. Drake and Josh would talk to the camera, showcase their point of view, and help set up the plot for the whole episode. While it appeared to have been done as a creative choice, later clues from down the line may reveal that Drake and Josh was actually a show within a show. The reality show followed the characters' lives as they dealt with their teenage years and their mixed family life. Some of the biggest clues to the reality show theory actually come from other Nick shows. On Victorious, multiple characters have referred to watching the show, and on iCarly, clips of the show have been shown.
How come that little girl's so good at pranks?
One of the biggest clues comes from a character played by Yvette Nicole Brown. On Drake and Josh, Brown played the movie theater manager named Helen Dubois. On Victorious, the same character comes to take over as principal of Hollywood Arts High School. If the characters on Victorious watch Drake and Josh and the same character shows up at their school, then this is pretty much a confirmation that Drake and Josh was a reality show set in their connected universes.
Oh, a treasure map. This is so great.
Steve's drug problem. Poor Blue's Clues. The preschool show we watched way beyond our preschool years has been under the microscope of rumors and theories for years. Some of the craziest rumors came when Steve left the show and was replaced by Joe, but people still can't coming up with theories about the adventures a grown man has with his puppy Blue, as rumors of Steve's death in real life were proven to be false. Other rumors sparked up about the character and the stories he comes up with. One of the more popular theories involves Steve taking drugs. The character's use of heavy and hard drugs has created the whole alternate reality where Blue and everything in his house comes to life. How else would you explain talking salt and pepper shakers who had a child together named Paprika? Things seem even more drug-induced when Steve starts jumping into paintings and going on all sorts of crazy adventures right inside his own home. These moments can all be seen as drug hallucinations. For all we know, Steve is just lounging in his big chair, letting his mind run wild. You can only imagine the drugs and lifestyle the character got into when he left the house to Joe and headed off to college.
I wish for no more breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Just dessert!
Timmy Turner's Antidepressants. The Fairly Odd Parents had 10 seasons of happiness and adventures, but it didn't always start out this way. Timmy Turner was not a happy child at the beginning. He had troubles at school, was often neglected by his parents, and he was forced to deal with Vicky, his horrible babysitter. According to a theory, all of these factors led to depression. To help with his depression, Timmy didn't get the help of Fairy Godparents, but rather was prescribed antidepressants he manifested into his alternate view of godparents. Each godparent Timmy has could be broken down into different antidepressant medications. The antidepressant Prozac is represented by Wanda. Prozac is known for allowing a person to be calm and focused, much like Wanda is in the series. Cosmo represents the antidepressant medication known as Zoloft. This works to make you more giddy and excited rather than depressed, and represents exactly how Cosmo acts in the series. The pills are taken in Timmy's room, which just happens to be the place where the fairies appear. Anytime the fairies run out of magic or disappear, it's essentially the pills wearing off, and Timmy's depression starting to take hold again. Come to think of it, we're getting a little depressed just thinking about this theory. Jimmy Neutron's government conspiracy. Jimmy Neutron is a boy genius who entertained Nick fans for over a decade. Looking back on the series, there were some odd things involving the characters and the town of Retroville. A widespread theory about the show puts everything into a perspective easy to explain. Jimmy and the other children were genetically modified government experiments used to help with military research and inventions. Basically, Jimmy's whole life is a big lie. The town of Retroville is a front, with paid actors used to play citizens. This is one of the reasons no one bats an eye when Jimmy flies around in a rocket or has some sort of crazy weapon. This is also a reason why a number of Jimmy's inventions just happen to disappear. Once invented, the government takes them for their own research development. The theory is proven even further with the show's presence of Area 86. The secret government facilities exist in Retroville and are obviously the headquarters where Jimmy and all of his friends are tracked and researched. Jimmy's work and inventions have been influenced by several seemingly random events in the town, but maybe those were purposely created to get the new inventions the government needed. Are you afraid of the dark, scariest ghosts? One of Nickelodeon's greatest shows will always be Are You Afraid of the Dark? The anthology series followed a group of friends known as the Midnight Society as they took turns telling scary stories around a campfire. Aliens, clowns, and witches were just a few of the tales keeping kids up late at night in the 90s and early 2000s. The show touched on many different subjects, but one of the scariest aspects may have been the Midnight Society themselves. A theory speculates that the Midnight Society was actually made up of the ghosts of teens who died young. Breaking down the various events can help shed light on this eerie theory. The characters only showed up at night. They were never seen in their everyday life. And they all seem to come from different directions in the woods. Their parents never cared how late they stayed out, and none of them really touched on lives outside of their ghost story group. When a new member joined the group, they represented another tragic death of a teen. When a member left the group, they crossed over to the other side as the Midnight Society represented a state of limbo, until the teen ghosts can confront their darkest fears and sins. Now reliving the series just got a little scarier.
Definitely something else.
I felt like I was kissing my sister.
Never mind. Complete friend zone.
Clarissa explains it all to her children. Before Melissa Joan Hart wooed audiences with her witchy magic on Sabrina the Teenage Witch, she was making fans with her likable character and family life on Clarissa Explains It All. The show lasted for 5 seasons on Nick, and the final episode left us with a fantasy glimpse at the future, but we never knew some of the future would become a reality. In one of the more legitimate theories found from Nick shows, the 90s series may have a connection to the 2004 series entitled Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. On the show, we're never introduced to Ned's parents, but we do learn that Ned's second surname is Darling, the same as Clarissa. This could easily be brushed off as a random coincidence, but a further clue about Ned's father adds more to the connection. In another episode, Ned refers to his father as Sam, the name of Clarissa's neighbor and love interest from the series. This means that Ned could be the love child of Clarissa and Sam. But it's pretty clear that Sam isn't stepping up to be the father he should be. Maybe he's too busy visiting other houses and climbing up windows with his trusty ladder. Of course, the connection may seem legit if you ignore the release of the official Clarissa novel where she's childless.
Scared you didn't die.
You always scare me, Pinky.
Pinky the Brain. The opening theme song for the hit animated show Pinky and the Brain tells its audience from the get-go that one of them is
A genius.
and one of them is
Insane.
While that is indeed handy information to have, the song actually never explicitly tells us which one is which.
You're a mouse. This is a horse.
People are so intolerant.
It's easy to assume that Pinky is the insane one as the show is called Pinky and the Brain, but we're not so sure it's that simple. Brain's goal in life is to essentially take over the world. Every episode sees him come up with a new plan to fulfill that goal. These plans are admittedly really insane. They're more insane than they are smart, in fact. Pinky, on the other hand, is left playing dumb and tries to thwart the plans to take over the world. He's the one who pokes holes in Brain's plans in every episode, and it's proven right in the end. Now, if we look at this information at face value, who seems like they're the insane one and who seems like the genius? Brain may think he's smart, but as Albert Einstein stated, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting something to change.
That's disturbing.
The Curious Case of Ed, Edd, and Eddy. This theory pulls no punches with its fan base. In short, it suggests that these slightly moronic and troublesome children found in the show Ed, Edd, and Eddy are in fact dead. Yikes. So how is it that we have a cartoon based on their exploits?
Look at me.
As it turns out, the boys are in purgatory, which is represented as a cul-de-sac on the show, a setting that the boys never leave. If they are in purgatory, it would explain a few bizarre clues hidden throughout the series. For one, there are no adults shown at any time in the series, not one. You'd think that there'd be someone mowing a lawn or calling for the kids at some point.
Think about it.
These three kids are left to their own devices. It would also explain why they have a bluish tint to their tongues, as tongues can turn blue upon death. The kids also all died at different times and all came together at the cul-de-sac. Johnny 2x4, another kid on the block, carries around a piece of wood and would have used that as a toy in the early 1900s.
Save yourself.
Eddie was a fast talker from the Great Depression, while Double D Ed passed in the 1980s, which explains his fascination with technology.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ash's reality. Ash Ketchum is one of the poster characters of the 90s. If you don't know about him or Pokemon, then you likely were not around in the 90s, or were living in a world without television. But despite how much of an impact Ash and Pokemon have had on the youth of the 90s and the world in general, there's something that doesn't quite add up with his journey. In the first season, Ash embarks on a quest to collect them all and reach the Indigo Plateau. There's two sides to this theory. Both suggest that Ash's reality isn't what it seems. One is that Ho-Oh, the mythical Pokemon that flew over Ash in the first season, granted Ash's wish to stay young, which is why he's still a child after all these years on the go. Seriously, Ash doesn't age at all. The other possibility is that the electrocution Ash gets from Pikachu early on in the show alters his reality and places him in a coma.
Shocking, isn't it?
Everything from there on, all the new Pokemon and adventures, including Pokemon that aren't part of the original 151, are figments of his imagination as he's comatose. He walked off that electric shock like it was nothing, but this theory suggests that Ash never got the chance to walk it off after all. Which one seems more likely to you?
How incredibly observant you are.
Two and the same. If you grew up in the 90s, there's a good chance you watched something by Genndy Tartakovsky at some point in your life. He created Dexter's Lab, Samurai Jack, and worked extensively on Powerpuff Girls, among other things. Now, what if we told you that Samurai Jack and Powerpuff Girls had something in common besides their similar animation styles? If you ever watched both shows, you may have noticed that Samurai Jack and Professor Uranium kind of look alike. Since Tartakovsky is the animator on both, it's not too crazy to see why. But what if it's more than that? This theory suggests that both characters are, in fact, one character. The theory suggests that after Jack's battle with Aku, both were launched into a time portal. Aku became a liquid version of himself thanks to his evil ways. In a new world, though, one with different rules than his own reality, Jack takes it upon himself to learn about Aku's new liquid form, or Chemical X, if you will, which of course leads to the lemonade that creates the Powerpuff Girls. Do you think that's too crazy, or is there just a smidgen of logic there to make it plausible?
Are you ready?
All systems go.
Claw, the original. In the 90s animated series, the Inspector Gadget we know of is in fact the second Inspector. The first one was missing in action and presumed dead, which caused his niece to build a robotic replacement of the Inspector. But what really happened to the original Inspector Gadget? The chief villain in the hit cartoon is of course Dr. Claw. Despite his presence in the show, we've never actually seen what Dr. Claw looks like. And there's good reason for that, as it's heavily theorized that he's in fact the first Inspector Gadget. The theory suggests that the original Gadget was a police officer who bit the dust while working a case, but he was so good that the station couldn't risk losing him. So they built a robot to replicate the presence of the outstanding officer.
Wowzers!
But the original Inspector survived. He may have had his life, but he was left scarred, disfigured, and insane. Seeing that he was replaced infuriated him, sending him into such a rage that he became Dr. Claw.
So it's Gadget.
The chief villain in the cartoon, whose sole mission in life is destroying the robot that replaced him. The evidence also showcases that Claw never harms Penny, the niece, as she's family, and that he's a bit of an idiot, which tells us that the robot didn't match the intelligence of the original police officer.
You might actually impress somebody.
Shh, it's coming on.
What's with Doug? One of the most unique things about Doug from the cartoon show named after him is his wacky and playful imagination. Every episode, he drifts off into his imaginary lands, often imagining himself as a hero of sorts, or maybe a rock star. But it's one thing to imagine a daydream. It's another thing to have Doug Funny interact with them. In fact, things can get pretty dangerous when he's in the dream world. In one such dream, he's riding a bike through traffic, without a care in the world. Only since it's also happening in real life, when he snaps out of the daydream and into the real world, he's already crashed crashed into a car. This means that Doug's dreams are almost too real, causing him to blur the lines between fantasy and reality. Sounds kinda dangerous, putting him and others at harm. With that in mind, it also sounds like Doug may be suffering from schizophrenic hallucinations that alter his perception of reality. If Doug actually is suffering from schizophrenia, it would explain why he's able to do the things that he does. It also would be a subtle commentary on what it's like to live with such a condition, without getting too in your face about it.
You mean you didn't even know I run away?
The imagination of Angelica. Angelica is a character that most kids kind of hated, but there are some pretty dark reasonings for her behavior in the show. Her parents are constantly ignoring her, with her mom constantly on the phone and her dad pretty much not caring about her except for surface encounters. So she creates some imaginary baby friends, which explains why she's the only one who understands them. So why would Angelica create babies and not kids her own age? Since her parents only really reach out to her to give discipline, and since she's neglected, it comes off as unwarranted and even mean. So since she only understands the authority figure, she creates the baby so she in turn can become that figure and ends up interacting with the Rugrats.
You know, time occasionally feels like it's going by very slowly.
Caillou isn't doing so well. This one is probably the darkest theory on this list, which is why we saved it for last. There's nothing worse than seeing a child being sick, and there's a good chance that Caillou is as sick as you can be. Can you think of any healthy youngsters who are completely bald? We don't just mean buzz cut bald, but zero hair on the head bald. We can't either, unless they happen to have been diagnosed with cancer. Caillou's sister Rosie has red hair, and their parents are shown to be brunettes, which in itself is a little unusual. So unless Caillou's mother shaves his head every day with a straight razor, there's a good chance that the boy is actually really sick, which means that Caillou's parents may have adopted Rosie, as the parents may have wanted another child but wanted to avoid the chance of another child being inflicted with the illness. Thankfully, if Caillou really is sick, he's not letting it dampen his mood, and he carries on having adventures and learning new things. So in that regard, Caillou could actually be a positive role model for kids going through similar treatments. That is assuming the theory is correct though. But we don't think Caillou's mom is that mean to shave his head every single day. Which dark theory do you think is most likely to actually be real? Which one is completely nuts and has no chance of being real at all? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to Screen Rant to get more videos like this one in your playlist every day.